Good evening. It's 7 o'clock, and I'd like to open the May 28th school committee meeting. This meeting is being held virtually through Zoom. The town of Littleton began conducting remote participation Zoom meetings pursuant to Governor Baker's emergency order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law on March 19th, 2020. Since that time, unanticipated legal concerns relating to the open meeting law have been brought to our attention by the town clerk. Those concerns were supported by the Attorney General's office and confirmed by town council. One concern is that the chat function allows a parallel text conversation to a board's public meeting. Chat is essentially running commentary that is occurring but is not moderated or followed by the chair. All participants and listeners may not be aware of comments being made because some meeting participants join by phone and do not see these conversations. Another concern is conversations between residents within the chat room which are not incorporated into the public record. In response to these concerns, the town will implement the following changes, which in no way prohibit any member of the public from participating in discussion and sharing information during a public meeting, and will ensure that all listeners and participants have equal access to this meeting. People that join the Zoom meeting are set so their microphones are muted. If you called in by phone, please use *6 to mute or unmute your phone. So that the meeting can occur in an orderly fashion, we ask that people who join the meeting keep their microphones on mute so background noises do not interfere with the meeting. If you wish to participate in the meeting, please use the raise your hand function available on Zoom, or if you called in by phone, dial *9, which will activate the raise your hand function. The meeting host will notify the chair of the raised hands, and the chair will determine whether and when to allow public comment. When called upon, participants should unmute, then state their name and address. After speaking, we request the participant return their microphone back to mute. All right, haven't gotten through all that. We'll go ahead and start the meeting. We have a consent agenda, the minutes from May 14th, 2020, and oath to bills and payroll.
Make a motion to accept the consent agenda as read.
Seconded.
Motion's made and seconded. Are there any discussion on the consent agenda? Hearing none, I will call for a roll call vote. Daryl?
Darrell Baker, yes.
Matt?
Matt Hunt, yes.
Jen?
Jen Wilson, yes.
Mike Fontanella votes yes as well. We have two sections in the meeting for input from interested citizens, one now and one closer to the end of the meeting. If there are any interested citizens who would like to speak before the school committee, please use the raise your hand function, and Dorothy, our mediator, will bring you forward.
There are not any hands raised.
Okay. We will dive right into new business. We have the list of colleges. Dr. Clenchey, do you want to go over that with us?
Last Friday was their last day of remote learning, so they're officially done their remote learning. And on Tuesday and today, they were picking up their books and materials and dropping off supplies as well. I'd like to commend Dr. Harrington and Mr. Kamu on a job well done. We managed to keep social distancing intact, and it was very well run, no backup in terms of traffic, and went really smooth. So thank you for that. I'd also like to thank the PTA for showcasing our seniors. That's a nice addition, a nice additional touch to what's been done in the past. They have this information on their Facebook page, but a lot of us have been tweeting out the showcases of each student as well. So it's a nice recognition to our seniors. In your package, you have a summary sheet of the colleges and universities that our students are attending. And you can see quite a wide variety of universities. Our students in this senior class they don't appear to be traveling as far as some of our previous classes, which is good, close to home, so to speak. Having said that, we have some students moving to a southern state, Florida, to go to school, and California as well. So there is some distance that some of our students are traveling. In terms of statistics, 85% of our seniors are attending four-year colleges, 10% are attending two-year colleges, and 5% are either going into a job or being employed, or they're going to postgraduate education programs. So So very proud of our seniors' accomplishments, and also I'd certainly like to thank them for their patience and resilience during their senior year, having a senior year that's been different from any senior year in high school since 1917. So they've done a great job. Spirits are high, and we certainly have more festivities planned as we go into June and July.
Great, thank you. Any comments or questions on the colleges that our seniors are attending?
Just to echo the superintendent, Dr. Clenchey, thank you for your kind words. It was a team effort today, absolutely, by the staff and faculty who showed up today to help us, and also on Tuesday with the senior checkout process. Superintendent attended both days, so his visibility is much appreciated by everyone, and he went around and made sure to say thank you to everyone, so we appreciate that. This is an extraordinary time. It's so unfortunate that our class of 2020 is experiencing this. Littleton has really risen to the occasion. So many, supportive comments and gestures and just messages from students as well as from parents and community members. We really appreciate it. I think it has helped to keep morale fairly high despite the extraordinary circumstances we're all enduring right now. So I just want to give a shout out and thanks to the class of 2020. We have a few more announcements, and I don't know what it went at one portion of the meeting. You want me to give it just a quick update on graduation? But just a shout out to them as well as to the staff and whole community for helping us get through this extraordinary time.
All right. Any comments from school committee members? All right, hearing none. Dr. Harrington, why don't you go ahead and segue right into the high school graduation update?
Yeah, just a quick update. Not much in terms of details. The details will be shared with the families coming soon, and actually as they develop, because we're responsive to the announcements from the Massachusetts Department of Public Health, as well as the governor and Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. But the key message really is that July 31st is the graduation date. We're aiming for Alumni Field to have people, family members in attendance, socially distanced, of course, with all the health safety precautions that would be mandated. DESE has just recently released, I think in the last week or week and a half, guidance to high schools about how to manage graduations through the summer. So we'll be looking closely at that, working with town officials, Board of Health, police, fire, and making sure that it's as smooth and as safe event as possible. And the date is July 31st. It's a Friday. We did meet with class officers. We have a little graduation team together that we meet with weekly, and they're made up of class officers as well as people who are pivotal to the organization of graduation each year. And they decided that they wanted it on a Friday night rather than a Saturday as their preferred time. So we're going to do it Friday night, July 31st at 5 p.m. Students will receive instructions, of course, to arrive earlier, or graduates, that is. And then a rain date will be scheduled for August 1st, Saturday morning at 10:30. We're hoping for Alumni Field, and we're hoping to be able to have as many people as we possibly can in attendance with social distancing, masks, and all the safety precautions. The event, we need to do a scaled down event. We're prepared to modify that, and we'll send instructions to families about that, as well as the graduates, about what the possible scenario is if we have to do a really scaled down graduation. But it will look certainly very different. This is a historic class going through an historic time. And I just wanted to make sure we shared the date publicly to the television audience in town, as well as the school committee. We have already communicated this to parents and students last week about the July 31st date.
All right. Any comments or thoughts from school committee members?
Yes. So what type of arrangements are we making for people that are still maybe uncomfortable in that environment, and also for people that may be either moving out of town or not available during that time?
Yeah, I appreciate the question. It's definitely something that's crossed our mind. So I've discussed this with the executive director of LCTV, Mark Curry, and the ability to, we certainly will be filming the event, but we would need to, we're looking into options for potentially live streaming the graduation. That would require some type of internet modification or adjustment, or I guess implementation at maybe in the press box. I'm going to get into the details with the tech staff as well as LCTV. and some other folks who might be helpful in arranging that. We would like to definitely broadcast the event for people who are unable to attend because they're either have travel plans and previous commitments, they're out of state, or they just don't feel comfortable attending and they'd rather watch it from the comfort of their home. So I hope that helps to answer your question, Daryl. That's
It's more specifically, in terms of participation, in terms of observing and the other parts there. I'm referring more in terms of conveying the diploma to the student.
Oh, okay. The diploma to the student is going to be, we won't be handshaking. We won't be handing
No,
off the diploma.
John, excuse me. He means if somebody doesn't want to come to graduation, it just doesn't, because they either can't or don't want to, a student, how are we going to convey the diploma to them?
In a formal, in a setting that's commensurate with the
So
the event here.
yeah, this does happen from time to time. Each year, I think, Mr. Camo and actually Mrs. Temple can remember probably some individual, and certainly the superintendent can remember over the years together that we've had individual students who it's just not their thing. Crowds, the whole spectacle of graduation. The bulk of students want that, but every now and then we have a student that's just not their thing. So but in this case, it may not be that they don't like crowds, they just don't feel safe, or they have a pre-existing condition that they're concerned about, or a family member. We will arrange as needed, a private moment with them so they can dress in cap and gown to take a photo. We're going to be very responsive to individual needs. That's what we've done in the past. It seems to be well received when we do that. We make it really special and meaningful. We're able to share some kind words at the time, and I've had private graduations at LHS over the years. Just that they're not really well known, but they're with the individual families. And now we have to have the extra health precautions where I'm not able to be as close with the photos or be as close with certainly shaking hands and hand out the grip and grin of the diploma being handed off. That won't happen, but we'll certainly be able to recognize and take appropriate photos. I hope that helps it for the individual.
Yeah, I guess, since it took I guess it didn't come out as one of the primary options. And, I realized that the students that you consulted with, came with a consensus recommendation, but that may not be an absolute piece there. And I don't want people that may feel pressured because that was what the class group recommendation was for the graduation. And I'd like to make sure that that's presented as a primary option for people, not as some type of secondary or, because you decided not to type of position.
In fact, we have some students who will want to receive, they don't want to wait till July 31st. They've earned a diploma as of July 5th. They would like to receive it earlier and move on with their lives. Every now and then, I know I've talked to other high school principals who have students heading off to boot camp in July. So they've had to make and I've done that in the past where I've had special events for individual graduates. And we'll be sure to advertise to address any concern that you're hearing or you're feeling around that. We'll be sure to get messages out to all the students, all the graduates, as well as their families, that if they would if they would prefer an alternative, we can arrange that between really July 5th and the scheduled graduation ceremony of July 31st.
There's been a lot of conversations going on in terms of high school graduation. We actually received updated protocols this week that really did not accept drive-by graduations. So during the week with the Commissioner of Education working with the Department of Health, they've decided to relax that requirement, but have also put in stringent guidelines if people are going to have drive-by graduations. These guidelines are in place until June 19th, and then we'll be waiting for further guidelines after that point. So
thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that too, because we're definitely going to have to, make sure we're paying attention to the guidelines and incorporating that into our planning. And like I said before, we do have a planning committee. And just so you know, we actually have already made some plans, Daryl, with some families for pickup of diplomas. Their preference is not to be participating in any ceremony already. They don't want any. They don't want any photos, cap and gowns. They want to be very, very. They just want to be, informal and pick up their diploma and move on. And that's in the small numbers, but that does happen from time to time, and we arrange for that as well.
And if you hear of somebody that's uncomfortable attending the graduation as we're planning it, please have them reach out to us so we can accommodate them.
All right, we're good on that. All right, thank you, Dr. Harrington. Next on the agenda is a financial update from Steve Mark.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So there's a report in your, there's a financial report in your packet. That report is through April of 2020. So we still have May and June to report out as well. So it is a little tricky this year because of the shutdown, and we're working through all of the accounts now, including all of the revolving funds to maximize the expenses from the appropriated account. So we're working through those processes now, and we'll have a final report for the end of the year at a later time for school committee. I'm more than glad to answer any questions if there are specific questions at this time regarding that financial report.
Anybody have any questions or input?
Yeah, can I ask a question, please?
Yep.
I should have looked at this before, but do you have any inkling of what the percentage used at this point a year ago was for any of these categories, or is it?
I do not off the top of my head. I'd be more than glad to get that report from last year and send that to you, and we can look at that.
Yeah, I'll look it up too. I
Okay.
hadn't thought of that earlier. Thank you.
Yeah, yep, sorry. One other thing, if I may, while I'm here, I would like to also announce that bus registration for next year is open. It opens June 1st. The information is online. Registration is all online through our website. And there is a mechanism. We did create a mechanism if families need to defer that registration payment until the fall, until September. There is a mechanism to do that. So you can still register students now to ride the bus for next year. And there is a mechanism to defer that payment until September. There's a link on there. It'll ask you to fill out a form. It'll register that information. We'll use that to register students for the buses. And then we'll look for payment in the fall. So just want to be clear on that. People can register now if they want to. They can pay now, that's an option, or they can defer that payment until the fall.
I know it's early still, and has the state been providing any guidance and considerations if we have to reduce the maximum capacity on any of the buses and what our impacts might be? Or is it too early to be asking you that question?
Yeah, I have not seen any specific guidance at this point in time. Maybe the superintendent has.
I had a meeting this week with the commissioner and excuse me, a number of other public officials. They're still working things out in terms of what appropriate social distancing is. They will. Their intent is to release guidelines on June 15th, which will include guidelines for September startup as well.
Thank you.
Any other questions I can try to answer? Or thank you.
All right, thank you. Moving into presentations, the first one we have are on handbook changes.
And why don't we start out with Shaker Lane?
Hello, everyone. I'm just going to bring up the changes. So many of the changes that we had at Shaker Lane were purely grammatical. The first one, though, that you'll see for the handbook changes are the changes that we brought forward back in January for our preschool program. So the hours and the days and the changes are noted there. You'll see our preschool times on the first one that are not highlighted are our current times, days, and offerings. And the ones that are highlighted are the changes that we will be making. So those were brought forward back in January and approved. The second session is the school dismissal. There actually was a typo there that I didn't catch a few years ago, and I apologize for that. I highlighted it. It was 12 p.m. Our dismissal on the half day is 12:15. So we wanted to change that to read 12:15 p.m. And the rest of the changes are grammatical. You'll see that I highlighted the change in the paragraph above and then the change for it to read correctly right below. So the first word change would be read and changed to changes. Under due process, I apologize for that. I believe it read inviting in the last sentence. Principal would deliver written notice to the parent of the basis for and length of the in-school suspension and invite the parents to meet to discuss the student's behavior if such a meeting has not already occurred. So just the grammatical change on that one. Two changes under bullying in the subsection titled retaliation. It should read against a student. And it should also read disciplinary action. Under the query policy, educations should read education. Under physical activity, there should be a comma between restricted and consider. And under field trips and overnight trips, the second bullet, instead of complete, it should read completed. The last change is policy revision and review. In that paragraph, it should read reasons as opposed to reason. And those are our changes.
Okay. Any comments or questions from school committee members?
My apologies for not catching that 3 years ago.
Dr. Clengy, are we making motions to accept these and votes?
If you choose, so we can go through them all and just accept all of them if that's what you would like to do. If there's a question about something, we can do a second motion to bring it back, or just defer a motion more correctly and bring it back next meeting.
Okay, well, let's go through the rest of them, and I'm assuming we're going to be fine. Okay, so who's next?
Let's go with Russell Street.
Hello. I just sent a summary of our changes. I had some clarification around arrival and dismissal procedures. In the current handbook, it states that school starts at 8:05, but it also says that you can drop off until 8:05. So I added a sentence that the expectation is that students are in their classroom at 8:05. We also made a small change to dismissal this year where we held the cyclists until all the cars were out of the lot. So that's reflected in the handbook as well. I added smartwatches to the piece about cell phones, that smartphones are to be used, the smartwatch can be used as a watch feature, but the cell phone features cannot be used. I added an addition that the playground rules are posted on the playground. Students requested from the very beginning of the year that we allow gum at school. So we did make the change to allow gum at school with the caveat that each teacher has the right to prohibit gum in their classroom if they choose, the library, for example. And then there's just some minor language changes throughout. I took out things like MP3 player, things that weren't relevant anymore. And that's the summary from Russell Street.
Can I bring my Walkman?
I had to take that out, Daryl. I'm sorry. That was something I took out.
I can picture some fourth grader bopping down the hallway with a boombox on his shoulder saying, "What are you going to do now, lady?"
It's true.
Any questions or comments on Russell Street besides Daryl's jokes?
Hey, serious business.
All right, we'll roll on to the middle school.
Middle school did not have any changes
Okay.
in their handbook, so we just have the high school.
Yeah, I can go quickly over the high school. We had some changes with you can see just some simple language changes. We really want to emphasize, as I've said at previous school committee meetings, cessation programs. That's in the process of development. Before the closure, actually, we were planning on partnering with a youth and family services program that has a regional grant to provide these programs free of charge for students, or train the trainer model for LPS staff. So we'd like to work on that. We can see where we can go with that in the summer. But right now we wanted to make mention that the availability of cessation programs for kids who vape or have some type of habit with e-cigarettes would be available through multiple sources, not just relying on a counselor, that kind of thing, or the school nurse. It would be, assistant principal might make a recommendation. And we would like to potentially bring forward that as an alternative consequence to a 1 day. Right now we have minimum 1 day out of school suspension. And I've mentioned before that what we'd like to do is have this as an optional, program, but we have to develop it and see, make sure we have it in place so that there's some substance, it's substantive and that it has some responsibility on the part of the student to own the behavior and learn from it and break the habit. So we're in the process of discussing that. And while I have the mic, I also wanted to just acknowledge that as we've gone through remote learning, we've discussed this as an admin council at previous meetings. We are looking at potentially learning. We're going to learn from how this experience has gone this spring, but there may be some adjustments we might want to bring to the school committee in the fall related to if we have some type of hybrid model or any type of remote learning that has to be put in place in response to an outbreak or anything like that in the future. So I wanted to make sure I acknowledge that might be something I've discussed it with the superintendent previous, and it might be something we'll bring to the school committee in the fall or in the later summer if there's a need to. The other change I think that's about it. Mr. Camone added vaping devices at my request and the school council's request to make it explicit that, what's in e-cigarette? Well, we want to make sure that we acknowledge that students, the primary issue we're having is vaping, which is a form of an e-cigarette.
All right. Any questions or comments on the proposed high school changes?
Just one. I think just getting the correct terminology, since it's, been a little dated. There's a difference in terms of the second paragraph was referring explicitly to tobacco and does not include the vaping devices there. And then the other comment was information about tobacco cessation is available. Should that be extended a little bit to go tobacco and like nicotine cessation, a little bit more general than specifically to tobacco?
Sure, that'd be an easy fix. And I think it's sometimes, this wordsmithing process happens. It's very much a process. If you'd like us to incorporate the word nicotine.
Well, I agree. From the vaping devices is not.
Well, vaping includes and we do have other language and other parts of the handbook that cover, other types of substances such as marijuana and things that are prohibited on school grounds. We could. That is already mentioned, and we use that if we have a student who's using the vaping device for something other than tobacco.
Right. Well, they don't put. There's a technicality. They don't use tobacco in it. It's the nicotine. It's the liquid nicotine.
Oh, okay. So what you're asking for is precision in our language, rather than. I think the tobacco is related to cigarettes.
Right.
The actual, the old-fashioned Marlboros or whatever you want to call it. So, yeah, we can use nicotine instead of tobacco. Thank you for that catch.
That's all that I had.
Daryl, I'm thinking about it based on what I think you're raising good points. I think it would be worthwhile to have the high school take another look at the tobacco section and make some uniform changes throughout it to make it a tobacco and nicotine policy and make sure that the language is standardized and consistent throughout the policy. Because to be honest, I mean, we need to keep the tobacco. Oh, sorry, the lights went off in my office. I got to move around for a minute. There we go. Thank you. tobacco needs to remain on there, but nicotine needs to become its separate consideration because it can be delivered in many different ways now. So I think it would be worthwhile, rather than just sort of reach a general consensus, to ask the high school to go back and revamp it and bring it back to us. Is that okay with the administration?
Yeah, that would be fine. We want to make sure we get it right. And we want to make sure the terminology is aligned with the times as well. So I appreciate those suggestions, and we really do need to include nicotine and tobacco and make sure that the language flows appropriately.
And there, whether there's any language changes that need to now flow down to the 6th through 8th grade level also, because it's probably happening there also already.
Yeah, that's a good point too. So given that, I think it would be appropriate to not entertain any motions or votes on this, and we'll bring it back. What do we have? 2 more meetings? No, 1 more meeting after this before we close for the break for the summer.
Right.
Okay. I think is it reasonable to assume you guys can get that done for the next meeting?
Yeah, not a problem at all. It's just, we go through this process of review routinely every year. There's always a catch. We appreciate the feedback, and to add nicotine doesn't mean we would exclude tobacco. I should be very clear about that. And we can definitely make sure it's uniform. I see this as probably a future admin council agenda item for us just to go through the actual handbook language related to it. It certainly applies probably even as early as Russell Street, but certainly at the middle school too when it comes to the vaping stuff.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. I appreciate that. And we'll take this up again at the next meeting.
Sounds good.
All right, moving on. The second presentation is on the Student Opportunity Act grant application.
Chairman Cornell, if we could back up a bit. Did you want to make a motion for Russell Street?
We can do that.
And I guess one more comment. I was wondering whether I would wait until the next meeting to actually say this, but with all the uncertainty that we're facing in terms of what September is going to look like when we resume school, we most likely are going to have to have a few meetings in the summertime. So I just wanted to bring that up and certainly work around everybody's schedule.
I appreciate that. I anticipate that to be the case as well. I just know that we typically try to get what we would consider the normal run of business done before school breaks for the year, which I would consider this. But if it slips, knowing that we're going to meet again later in the summer to address other issues beyond the normal stuff, if there's a few things that we need to get finished as part of those meetings, that's certainly fine too.
Okay, thank you.
All right, but I agree. Let's entertain a motion to accept the changes in the Russell Street and Shaker Lane handbooks.
I'll make a motion to accept the changes proposed for the Shaker Lane and Russell Street handbooks.
Second.
All right, motion made and seconded. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, I'll go for a roll call vote. Daryl?
Daryl Baker, yes.
Matt?
Matt Hunt, yes.
Jen?
Jen Wilson, yes.
Mike Fontanella votes yes as well. Thank you. All right, now we'll move on to the Student Opportunity Act grant application. Beth Steele?
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for allowing me to come back and present our plan in full. So you may remember from previous presentations that the Student Opportunity Act allows for an infusion of funds into public schools through the Chapter 70. And the funds are targeted to close achievement gaps. And the goal of the funds is to do a few things really well, as opposed to spreading that out over multiple things. So we're focusing in on a select few items here. So the initial timeline that was put forth in the Student Opportunity Act has been adjusted due to the impact of COVID-19. And so the initial deadline of April has been postponed to mid-June. And so happy to present the plan in full to you now for that June deadline. So when I last presented, I shared with all of you how we were thinking about using the funds to support students through enhancing core instruction of elementary math, as well as increased targeted support. And so tonight we're able to see the plan in more detail in your packet. So you will see on that plan that there are 4 commitment areas. The first of which focuses on student subgroups. And so we had to identify which student subgroups are going to require this focused support. And so in looking at the data and after doing a review of data that we have, we were able to identify that students were consistently scoring lower on the math MCAS as opposed to the ELA MCAS. And specifically in grades 3 through 5, we had more students either partially meeting or not meeting expectations on the math MCAS than on the ELA MCAS. And so that kind of honed us in on math as opposed to ELA here. Since we're such a small district and our subgroup numbers are low, it's kind of hard to identify specific subgroups in major data put out by the state. However, through accountability data, our lowest performing group of students score on average 21.2 points below all students within LPS on math. And so this further examination of math MCAS data demonstrates the increase in percentage of high needs students achieving at partially meeting or not meeting the requirements. And so we're committing ourselves here through this plan to close the achievement gap for students with high needs. The second commitment area on this plan focuses on how we'll accomplish this goal of closing the gap. And so here we've really identified two main areas of focus. The first of which is a staffing. And that area is that we have a 0.8 math interventionist at Russell Street School who works with students across the grades 3 through 5 at Russell Street. Increasing this position to a 1.0 allows for 5.5 more hours of in-class support, as well as small group intervention. The increase in personnel here will allow for more direct tier 2 support for our targeted students. The second major area of focus here is on supporting educators to implement high quality aligned curriculum. And so this would entail a curriculum review in order to decide whether what we are using is of high quality, aligned to the state standards, and effective for our students that we have here in Littleton. So once the review is complete, we will then take the appropriate necessary steps forward, which could include a curriculum adoption and thus PD for educators with regard to that new curriculum. The third part of this plan speaks to the monitoring process of the goals that are set. And so you can see in the plan that we have 2 DESE outcome metrics, as well as 2 custom district metrics. The DESE metrics that we're going to look at here will be the math MCAS performance level, as well as math MCAS SGP or student growth percentiles. The district metrics would be our student growth on math growth assessments, as well as Acadian's math assessments. The fourth section and the fourth commitment here speaks to engaging families. And so as noted in our strategic plan, our district acknowledges that families and community members are active and contributing partners in the education of each child. And so recognizing this, we will continue to provide specific Tier 2 math progress reports to all students, families receiving Tier 2 support. Furthermore, the math interventionist will be able to attend parent-teacher conferences in order to connect with the family and provide suggestions where needed. Additionally, the math interventionist, along with other educators from Russell Street, will continue to promote empowering families evenings during which all stakeholders are able to come together to learn through engaging presentations and activities. In fact, just last night, there was actually the first ever virtual Empowering Families event held by Russell Street educators. Lastly, in the plan, you can see that we have engaged with stakeholders during the creation of this plan. So after conferring with stakeholders at PTA and school council meetings, we heard the desire for a strong curriculum that will support all learners. And thus, this is really at the heart of our plan here. So thank you for allowing me to convey this plan to you in more detail. I'm happy to take any questions at this point.
All right, any questions or input from the school committee?
Yes. I just wanted to ask about using the metrics in your commitment 3 there of MCAS. Does the fact that MCAS isn't happening this year have anything to do with this, or is it going to be messy next year as well?
That is a really good question. So it doesn't impact this year, the fact that MCAS is not being administered this year. The metrics would be set by DESE. So MCAS is actually one of the recommended metrics to use for the plan. And so the impact is that instead of using this year's MCAS results to set the metric or the goal, DESE will have to look at previous years. If moving forward, MCAS is not administered again next year, we are going to have to relook at the plan. As a lot of things right now are kind of up in the air, we'll have to adjust as needed moving forward.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
We could certainly use other metrics such as map testing. We have data for a number of years on that. And so it's not as if we lack the opportunity or ability to access standardized exams or academic checks and balances for this particular project. We're hoping that things will be intact next year, and setting that benchmark. I'm going to recommend that we take a look at MAP as well, since we've had an interruption in learning for 3 months during this year. And even if we go back and use the last administration of MCAS, their students most likely will be writing MCAS next spring. And we're going to have to take into account, was there an effect on the 3 months of remote learning compared to traditional learning? So there are more variables that we need to look at. I'm hoping that the answer is no, that there won't be any difference, but we want to make sure that our metrics are sound and have validity and reliability.
Any other comments or questions?
I have a comment. I like the presentation. It was very good. It gives me a lot more information. And now it's taken several months for some of it to sink in terms of the budget acts that designated money that was going to be provided into the piece here. There's a subtlety here that I think, depending on how the state continues in the future with this, there's basically $50,000 of our Chapter 70 money reserved for this function based on the way the act was worded. Excuse me, get these words out here. And that subtlety of that we have a state mandated use of our Chapter 70 money. It was a subtlety in our budget presentations that we didn't capture, and also make sure that as we look at our future budgets, the selectmen understand that the state is now reaching into our budget at certain levels here in order to have access to the funds that they're providing to us.
Salient point. All right, any other comments or questions? We'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve and concur with the student opportunity plan as presented.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any other further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, I'll call for a roll call vote. Daryl?
Darrell Baker, yes.
Matt?
Matt Hunt, yes.
Jen?
Jen Wilson, yes.
And Mike Fontanella votes yes as well. Thank you for the work we put in on that. Hopefully it's worth it. We'll find out. A lot's going to change, I think, in some of these things. We talk about which metrics to use, and Daryl brought up a good point about how the budget's being impacted. There's going to be a lot more discussion on all those things conceivably as we continue to navigate these choppy waters. All right, the next presentation is on high school college course and VHS online learning.
So I believe Keith is going to start this off, but I'll say a few words before we go through the slides. We've had a number of discussions around the school committee table in the last couple of years in terms of increasing our opportunity for our students to take dual enrollment classes within their high school programming. We've been taking a look at VHS and assessing whether or not it's meeting our students' needs in terms of our entire student body. And we've come to the conclusion when we did a cost analysis and looked at some of the courses that they were taking that it would certainly be a good opportunity for us to broaden the availability of courses to our students who are interested in taking online courses. So the proposal is designed to show you the costs and also the value in pursuing a broader online course base at the high school. With that, I'll turn it over to Keith.
Thank you. And the slides that are attached to the package just have a brief overview of our usage of VHS over the past couple of years, specifically this past year. As you may know, a school that partners with VHS pays a $7,500 fee to VHS to partner with them. The middle school actually right now is the one that is offering a teaching section to VHS in exchange for 50, I guess, free quote unquote student seats from that $7,500. In the past, the high school has also had a teaching section dedicated to VHS, but we have not had it in the past 2 years at least. And so the high school primarily is paying for VHS seats at a per student rate of $325 per seat. A year-long class, so an AP course, for example, which is a year-long class, counts for us as 2 seats, one in the fall semester and one in the spring semester. This past year, the high school enrolled 60 students in VHS. That included 16 students who took an AP course through VHS, but the majority of courses were semester-based courses in a variety of areas of study, variety of content areas. And so with the AP courses as an additional cost, there is an AP fee, which VHS collects of $75. And in the case of a lab science course, like an AP biology or environmental science course, there's also an additional lab fee, which is assessed by VHS, which can be anywhere between $175 and up to $250, I believe, for the student. So that seat, that course ends up costing the $325 for the seat, plus the $75 AP fee, plus the $150 to $250 lab fee. So that one AP course ended up costing between $550 and $650. We did at the high school this year actually borrow some of the seats from the middle school because they didn't use all their seats, and VHS allowed us to take some of the seats from the middle school and apply it to the high school from that 50 seats that they had. So that reduced our cost a little bit, but we still spent approximately $21,225 on student VHS seats. On top of that, there was a $1,639 stipend paid for the VHS site coordinator. And so in conversations that I've had with John and with Dr. Clenchey about VHS and online learning and the desire to increase our opportunity for dual enrollment courses, kind of in conjunction with what we're already offering in-house at the high school with our partnership with Middlesex Community College, we looked at some of the area colleges and what their cost of college was for traditional school, but also for dual enrollment credits. That's on the next slide. There's just a couple of examples of Middlesex Community College, who we already have a partnership with, offers a dual enrollment discount for high school students. So it's only $92 per credit or $276 per course, which is a 3-credit course. It's a semester of college course, which is a reduced rate from their $756 traditional Middlesex student postgraduate from high school cost. Interestingly, Fitchburg State University also offers a dual enrollment reduction from their standard tuition of $1,300 per course. They have a $100 per credit dual enrollment cost for a $300 course, again, for a 3-credit Fitchburg State course. UMass Lowell, for comparison's sake, they do not offer a reduction for dual enrollment. So any high school student looking to take a UMass Lowell course would pay the full $1,956 tuition to take a course through UMass Lowell. And so looking just very basically at a cost comparison, a student who looks to take a course at Middlesex or Fitchburg State, it would actually be cheaper for them to take a full-on college course than a typical elective course through VHS, and certainly more than cheaper than an AP course through VHS. And so the idea, I guess, would be to look at how we're spending that money and give kids opportunity to pursue college courses while still in high school.
Comments or input from the school committee? Well, actually, before we do that, are there any additional comments from either Dr. Harrington or Dr. Clenchey?
I just think we're going to see a growth in interest in community colleges. We have seen it over the last few years, given the exorbitant cost of college. And now with the pandemic, it's even become more of a viable option for families. You know, I've talked to families every year about, their enrollment choices, and some of them are from, the students could easily go on to really high quality, in many cases selective colleges, but they choose to go to community college for 2 years for cost savings and then transfer into the state system or to somewhere else. But generally it's into the state system. I think it's worth mentioning that these credits do apply as part of the Commonwealth Compact. So they're not just, for students who are necessarily community college bound, and then that's going to be the sort of termination or terminal part of their formal education. When students receive dual enrollment credit through the Commonwealth Compact that was passed in the last couple of years, they can transfer their credits. In this case, they'll be earning them in high school, but they'll be accepted at any state university, including the University of Massachusetts Amherst, which is often the big question we get. But all the state colleges in Massachusetts do accept them. We've found that some of our neighboring state colleges do accept it as well. I think Mr. Camo was telling me about a couple of universities or colleges in Connecticut recently that accepted credit, and we weren't sure how that was going to go when we first embarked on really broadening dual enrollment. But there's a real opportunity for our students who want to, push themselves a little bit and take, get a college experience while they're still in high school, or at least college content. And we find that based on feedback over the last few years from students, parents, and faculty, that a lot of our content that we offer is in some ways, more rigorous at the high school, and that's why we're able to get some of our courses approved for community college credit. It's already, some of our students are, when they go into their junior, senior year, are really being, in the honors classes, are really working at the college, taking college level, community college level content. And they have to take, I think we've presented on that before, where the syllabi have to be approved by professors at the community college. In this case, we're talking about, to be precise, enrollment in online or on-campus dual enrollment courses where students would receive credit for high school at LHS as well as for college that would be applicable or be able to be transferred throughout, to a 4-year program. It's a real opportunity for our kids. Right now, our students are taking challenging online courses, many of them AP courses, and they have to take a test at the end. That includes all kinds of additional fees. And they get high school credit, and many of the colleges aren't accepting that as credit. The bulk, as you can see from our matriculation data just presented at the outset of the meeting, most of our students do attend in-state schools and state colleges. This is a real opportunity for a large number of our students as we go through the future, and we think it's been an opportunity for us to support that. The other thing we don't want to neglect, though, is that the virtual high school courses are often very helpful for students in the freshman and sophomore year who want to challenge themselves a little bit, or they can't quite get that elective course, or that, they can't get the course they want at LHS because we're a small school, and virtual high school has allowed us to do that. We do have other ways of complementing that. We don't necessarily have to entirely break away from virtual high school. In fact, we have other providers that we've recently joined with, including Edgenuity and Edgesphere and some other companies. This is a really competitive marketplace to offer online content for high school students. And if it's affiliated with an accredited institution, we can honor that. Virtual high school has Certified teachers, we do look, Eduity does as well. So we want to make sure that the students are, the teachers are properly qualified to instruct our students as our teachers are. So I think those are things worth mentioning, just to add in to give you a little more insight. Happy to answer any questions.
We're also offering dual enrollment courses with some of our teachers teaching dual enrollment. Heard me talk about this before too. My desire would be to increase the number of dual enrollment courses that our teachers are teaching, to include an ELA and a math class. A number of students throughout the state and beyond are faced with taking remedial classes when they enter a four-year university, and by taking college courses in those two areas in high school, they would not be subject to having to take remedial classes, which I think is a benefit. There was a grant, introduced in the state this year that schools that had a significant or a large enough population with students that would be first college students were able to receive some money. Since that happened, we were somewhat of a forerunner in introducing dual enrollment in our schools. I think within a year we've fallen behind because of that program that was state sponsored. We want to make sure that we give our students every opportunity that we can to be successful. And I want to emphasize that this is not just targeted at our upper end students. We want to capture those students that may be questioning whether or not they want to go to college, and giving them opportunity to take a college course or two to build up that confidence level, and also make a decision with good information when they graduate from Littleton High School. We a year ago had a student finish high school and graduate with a 2-year degree, and I think we're going to have one more coming up in the next year or so or two. And I'm not suggesting that's our ultimate goal, but it just goes to show you that we need to think of as many ways that we can to offer programming to our students. Not all students are traditional students. And I think we need to acknowledge that more than we have in the past. I've witnessed students that had attendance issues in typical traditional school settings. And we're even witnessing this with remote learning now in our district. Some of these kids that struggle in a traditional school setting are flourishing in a remote learning environment. So again, one size doesn't fit all. This just gives us an opportunity to broaden our platform. And what's nice about this is we're doing it within an affordable cost range.
Before I open it up for comments or questions by the other school committee members, I just have a couple quick questions I think will help possibly inform any discussion that we have subsequent to getting these answered. When a student signs up for a VHS class, are they paying for that, or is the VH program built into our budget and supported by our budget?
It's supported by our budget. There have been times where, because of we already had fulfilled our allocated amount based on providing a teaching section, where families, because the course was so important, they would say, we're willing to pay for it. This is something we want to do. Over the years, we really have gone away from that.
Okay.
VHS courses are paid through the high school budget.
Okay. How about like the AP fee and the lab fees? Are those borne by the students?
I asked Keith about that earlier, because when that first came out, that was a new thing for us, and we had to adjust for it. It came in the last few years, right, Keith? And the AP, the lab fees, and then the additional fee. And then remember, the kids also have to they do pay their own testing fee, and that's true for our students. But we felt that was a burden we didn't want our kids to have to deal with, and we felt that was part of the course, so we assumed that cost.
So those particular fees that you cite in the presentation are not related to AP classes in general. They're related to the VHS offering the AP class.
Yeah, that particular vendor, it's a lab fee that we have to pay for because of it might be the transport of different items that they have and they have to provide. They were doing shipment of different things like lab test kits and that kind of thing.
And then the last question I have for the moment is, if a student signs up for a dual enrollment class with Middlesex, are they paying for that? My assumption is they are, because they're receiving credit for that.
Up to this point, yes. So the dual enrollment courses that are offered at the high school, the students are paying the full tuition, the 276 tuition.
Okay.
The school isn't paying anything for that.
Yep. Okay. Okay. At this point, other school committee members have questions or comments or thoughts?
No, you hit most of the things I had. It might, apologize if I've missed it there, but you mentioned you have several different vendors you work with for online pieces there. It might be good if you could just add to this presentation just the whole summary of the expansive offerings that we have, just so that we have it kind of captured or in a ready reference.
Yeah, sure. There's a few that are available. Most of the time, they're provided for credit recovery students who are really struggling to pass classes and just, or, you know, in lieu of summer school, or just, you know, in lieu of fulfilling graduation requirements in June and July. I've had a couple of students to work with a company called Keystone for us, and they provide us a lot of flexibility. Some kids don't really flourish with online you know, programming where it's all, you know, based on the screen. And we have a couple of vendors who provide the old-fashioned correspondence packets, you know, correspondence school, they'll send the packets of work. And that enables a kid who may have been, you know, it's not necessarily a choice like right at the outset of a semester. It's more of a credit recovery when I mentioned those vendors. I know that Edgenuity, though, we have had some students with health conditions, and we felt that the online platform that they provide in the coursework would be very successful. And we've had a good partnership with them on an individual basis from here to here, where they're able to, you know, doesn't matter. What we really liked about them is that in the middle of a term, if a student was taken ill with something, you know, they were able to engage in a course right away through that platform. Edgenuity allows us to go at any point in time during the school year, whereas VHS was, until recently, they've made some adjustments because for competitive reasons, but they were really a semester-based program like a traditional school. So we do use that, some of their options too, that have like 3 or 4 week courses to help kids accumulate credit.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Any other comments or questions? All right. I have a couple thoughts. I mean, in general, I'm very supportive of expanding our course offerings beyond the 4 walls. Having said that, there's a lot of check and balance that needs to be in place and a lot of due diligence that needs to occur to make sure that our students are being supported appropriately and that the rigor is where we want it to be. But I think that correct me if I'm wrong, but we've been VHS has been a vendor for us for at least the 15 years that I've been on school committee, or 14 years that I've been on school committee. And that marketplace is evolving so rapidly. I want to make sure that we're not entrenched with VHS simply because we're familiar with them. I think there's a lot of opportunity. Having said that, I see what you're saying in terms of the credit aspect versus the non-credit aspect, you know, of VHS versus, you know, Middlesex or Fitchburg, or frankly, there's dozens and dozens potentially of 4-year degree colleges that offer online classes. And I think that, I know at my house, because of the circumstances surrounding what we're all going through, we're taking more advantage of that than we ever have. And it seems worthwhile at its face. We'll find out as we go through the process. But I think that we're going to, Kelly, you said it, that, you know, we were at the forefront for a little bit. Now, all of a sudden, or maybe not, maybe we're dragging the curve just a bit more than you might like, which is understandable given how fast this is evolving. But I also think that this is going to become de rigueur for our families are going to expect us to be able to do this. And we're going to have to be able to keep up with the marketplace and keep up with our infrastructure as a, you know, public education school district to make sure that we're providing the service but doing it correctly. I'm optimistic that we're going to do well at this. I'm a little concerned about it's going to take time, effort, and paying very close attention to make sure that we get it right. I hope that we have. I appreciate the amount of effort that's being that has been put in prior, and that I expect to be put in subsequent to this. It may be something that we need to think about. Do we need more staffing specifically oriented towards supporting this type of learning beyond the four walls? So something for us, for as an administration, as a school committee, and as a community to start to think about as we decide how we want to move this district forward in the way we offer our curriculum beyond the four walls. But in general, I'm supportive of it, and I appreciate you guys continuing to move the district forward. And I mean, it doesn't look like you're looking for anything other than just general acknowledgement and support from the school committee at this point. And as Daryl indicated, as we add vendors, we certainly want to be kept up to date on who they are and how they do their business, and how our students are being supported as they become partners with us in providing education and curriculum to our students. All right, are we good with that? All right, we'll move on to the next section on the agenda is our second opportunity for input from interested citizens. If there's anyone that would like to bring something forward, please use the raise your hand function. Dorothy, do we see anybody that wants to speak up?
We do not have any raised hands, no.
Okay, we'll move into the subcommittee reports. Daryl, the PMBC.
PMBC, we met yesterday, last night. There, the one item, that I thought was going to be done for the year is the lights at Shaker Lane for the field, and according to the terms of the grant from the state legislature, that the grant funds have to be expended this fiscal year. This fiscal year, or there's a date there. They were considering purchasing the equipment and then storing it. And I think we're sending back to just get some clarifications on the terms of the grant and when that money has to be expended. Specifically, I made it clear that if they did order the equipment, that the school department was not going to take responsibility for storage or ensuring that it would still remain within possession of the youth softball and baseball folks, not the school department, because we did not want responsibility for any early equipment deliveries.
Okay. Keep us updated on that as it moves forward. Budget subcommittee, nothing to report, just kind of waiting for town meeting. We'll go right into policy subcommittee.
And tonight we're at the second reading of a whole bunch of them. Last time there was no comments or changes on them. Now that you've had a chance to reflect on them for a couple of weeks, if there's any concerns or questions, I'll try to address them the best I can. And if not, I would appreciate the three motions.
Okay.
Yes.
Good.
I noticed that there are several policies that are not gender inclusive, where there specifically calls out like he when we're talking about a superintendent. There's some he or she's and other things. So I can send a list of those to you, Daryl, for updates.
Okay. So which policies?
Okay.
We have to take them out of the motion.
Yeah. Okay. So they are, and I might say something twice, but EC and ECAC. How do you want to do this? Should I just read them off and then?
Well, the motions have all of them in it, so.
Yeah, okay, let me. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. There's 15 of them, so. I'm gonna just keep reading them off, or I don't know if that helps anybody.
Could you categorize them, Jen?
Yes.
Motion?
Do you want to see what I wrote down? You might be able to just see this. Oh, is that backwards for you? Okay, so never mind. So the he is referenced in EC and ECAC.
Hold on a second. Let me get my Word document so I can
Sure.
rewrite the motion here.
Now you're gonna have to read them all off later.
Yeah. Oh, hold on a second so I can.
So EC and ECA is in motion 3.
Okay, yeah, you want me to, I can tell you which ones they're in there.
Do that would help.
Okay. So then GCE, GCF, and JIC are also in motion 3.
So GCE, GCF,
and JIC.
okay, JIC.
Then, and that's for he or she. So then GBEA, JH, those are both in motion 2.
Sorry, it took me a minute to find my.
No, it's okay.
Word document. Okay, so if you go back to the modified policies, which ones in the modified policies need to be pulled from the motion?
Okay, so that's the second motion. Okay.
Yep.
GBEA, JH, okay, and that's it for that motion.
And then in the other list?
And then the rest are from the third motion.
Yeah.
Are you ready?
Off for me. I need you to read them back, the ones.
Okay, sorry. I thought you said hold on a minute. Okay, so they are EC, ECAC, GBEBC,
BBEBC.
GCE, GCF, IMDA, JHA, then JI, JIC, and JICFB. Oh, and 2 more. JQ and KE.
JQ and what? J?
JQ and KE.
So 13 policies under this motion 2. And 2 policies under the third motion.
Yes.
Did you say IMDA?
IMD as in David, A.
Yeah. All right. All right. Okay. Yeah, I see. Okay, and then what was I got JH and I missed the other one in the first batch. G something?
1 second, let me look at that one more time. JHA. Or wait, hold on, JHA.
Yeah, actually, there's 14 policies in motion 2. We had one listed twice.
Oh yeah, JIC was listed twice probably.
Yeah. Do you have JICFB?
I do.
Yes,
Daryl.
I do.
Okay.
Yep. Okay. All right. So I'm going to share my screen with the new motion on it. Let's see if that works.
Good job.
And those are the revised motions.
Sorry, I'm just looking at all of them to make sure. Yep.
And since you get you propose the changes, you get to read the motions.
I will gladly do that. Okay.
Anyway,
Anything, yeah.
was there any other comments on the policies?
All right, I hear none, so let's go ahead and we'll start with the first motion.
Okay, I'll make a motion to accept the first reading to rescind.
Sorry,
Second reading.
second reading.
Oops, sorry. Yep. Make a motion to accept the second reading to rescind the following policies: IHA, IHAE, IJJ, IJK, JP, KEC, KJA.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion on that motion? Hearing none, I'll call for a roll call vote. Daryl?
Darrell Baker, yes.
Matt?
Matt Hunt, yes.
Jen?
Jen Wilson, yes.
Mike Fontanella votes yes as well.
Okay. Make a motion to accept the second reading of the following modified policies: ACAD, BEDG, EDD, EEAG, GBA, GBI, IC/ICA, IG, IGD, IHAM, IHAMA, IHB, IHBEA, JB, JEB, JF, JFBB, JHD, JIH, JJF, JRA, JRD, KBE, KDB, KI.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion on that motion? Hearing none. Daryl Baker?
Darrell Baker, yes.
Matt?
Matt Hunt, yes.
Jen?
Jen Wilson, yes.
Mike Fontanella votes yes as well.
Okay, and make a motion to accept the second reading of the following policies as current: AD, ADF, EB, EBAB, EBC, EBCD, EBH, ECF, EFD, GA, GBEB, GBEC, GBK, GCG, GCIA, HA, HB, HF, ID, IGB, IHAMB, IHBD, IHBG, IHCA, IJ, IJA, IJL, IJOB, IJOC, IK, IKE, IL, IMA, IMB, JIB, JICA, JICC, JICE, JICFA, JICH, JIE, JJIB, JJIF, JKAA, JLC, JLCD, KA, KDA, KCD, KCD, KDD, KHA, KHV, KLG.
SECOND. Second.
All right, motion made and spelled out as a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Daryl?
Darrell Baker, yes.
Matt?
Matt Hunt, yes.
Jen?
Jen Wilson, yes.
And Mike Fontanella votes yes as well. All right. Daryl, you gonna go ahead and bring those other ones back on June 11th?
Yeah.
All right, thank you. All right, is there any other business before the school committee? All right, hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second,
Okay, motion made and seconded. Daryl?
Darrell Baker, yes.
Matt?
Matt Hunt, yes.
Jen?
Jen Wilson, yes.
Mike Fontanella votes yes as well. Thank you, LCTV. Dorothy, Bettina, thank you for helping out, and we'll see you all again on June 11th.